much. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you again and share some of our experiences with biofuels and traditional fuels and our vision for mobility and for energy in transport. My presence here is a follow-up of the presidential state visit this past January and the agreements which were made to intensify the exchange of knowledge and information. And I'm glad to be sharing with you some additional information beyond what was mentioned in the opening session. As mentioned, Brazil has a tradition for using biofuels which dates back to 1924. In 1975, the decision to intensify the use of biofuels was made because of pure dependence reasons after the first oil shock. In 1975, 81% of Brazil's oil needs were imported, and this meant a great hurdle to the balance of trade. So the reason for, so can you pass the next slide, please? So the reason for establishing the intensive use of biofuels, ethanol in particular, was not environmental, was not efficiency. It was purely reduction of dependence on imports. And at this moment, this past year, 2019, on average in Brazil, ethanol accounts for nearly 46% of gasoline use. How? By a mandatory blending of 27% in all gasoline sold, plus the distribution of pure ethanol, E100, in all fueling stations in Brazil. All 42,000 stations in a country which is in size 3 times India, and which means a lot of logistics operation behind it. This proportion is high, but next slide, please. And you can see how it compares with other countries. The U.S., as you know, is the largest ethanol producer in the world today, around 62 billion liters. Brazil is 35 billion liters. But the gasoline demand in the U.S. is 10 times the demand of Brazil. So I guess our colleagues are having some problem in uploading the presentation. But anyway, let's try. And you can see India last year had an average share of ethanol in the gasoline pool of 7.2%. There are some novelties in the world. Something which is growing very rapidly is the use of ethanol in France. 47% of all gasoline in France has already 10% ethanol. In Belgium, 79% has 10%. In Bulgaria, 100%. In Paraguay, 100% of gasoline has 25%. In Thailand, 12.4%, and so forth. Next slide, please. Okay. But you can see that the proportion of ethanol in the consumption of autocycle fuels has varied a lot. And this was a matter of concern. And at the National Council on Energy Policy, we decided to address this issue by creating a new regulation, which is called RenovaBio, which is a regulation which is aimed at promoting energy efficiency and increase increased integration with oil products. Next. Why? Well, we first analyzed the different efficiencies of combinations of motorization and fuels. And we know that there are different ways of doing that. You can look at analyzing at the tank-to-wheel, which is the partial view. You can use the well-to-wheel, which is the more complete system, or cradle-to-thumb, which is the final definite solution. Well, there is a lot of material, scientific material about well-to-wheel, and we compiled and asked the Brazilian Association of Automotive Engineers, of which I was a president once, to compile all this information, which is in this table, which is next, please. What does this table show? Do I have a laser pointer? Yeah. This table here shows that here on the y-axis, energy consumption in megajoules per kilometer. Here in the x, greenhouse gas emissions in grams of CO2 per kilometer. And here we have combinations for various motorizations and fuels. This is gasoline with zero ethanol currently. Not only Brazil, this is Europe and the US. And you can see that the energy consumption is around 1.62 megajoule per kilometer, and emissions is around 145 grams. Okay? How this technology is projected to evolve until 2032, this way, until this point. Okay? This is the hybrid with gasoline zero ethanol, which has a lower energy consumption, some gain in terms of emissions, and this is how it's projected to go until 2032. This line here, well, even greater energy consumption reduction, some gain in reduction of emissions. This is the battery electric vehicle using electricity from fossil base. But you don't get too much gain in terms of reduction in emissions. Okay? What is this green line here? This is the internal combustion engine using ethanol produced in Brazil from sugarcane. You can see that the energy consumption is still high, but the emissions coming out are very low. They are lower than all of these other alternatives. What is this black line here? This is the battery electric vehicle in Europe with the mixed of power in Europe, which is partially fossil, partially renewable. So ethanol used by internal combustion engine is lower than the current battery electric vehicle today and the battery electric vehicle projected until 1932. What is this line here? This is how it's projected to evolve, because the internal combustion engine is not optimized yet. What is this point here? This is the hybrid using ethanol, which was launched last September by Toyota. I have a car like this. This is the cleanest car on earth. It emits 29 grams per kilometer, and this is how it's projected to evolve. And this is the fuel cell using ethanol. Okay? What are these blue lines here? These blue lines represent the mixture between gasoline and ethanol in Brazil today. And you can see that these blue lines, oh, I can go here, okay? You can see that these blue lines, thank you. You can see that these blue lines, in terms of emissions, they are very efficient compared with what is happening today in the world. Next slide. If I summarize the information only talking about greenhouse gas emissions, you can see that the internal combustion engine with gasoline with zero ethanol today is 145 grams per kilometer. The internal combustion gasoline engine with 27% ethanol, which is what we are using in Brazil, 128, which is very similar in terms of emission of the hybrid technology without ethanol. So, by blending ethanol, I have the same benefit of doing hybrid without ethanol, pretty much. This purple line is the electric vehicle in the EU, at the best case scenario, 92. The University of Munich in Berlin estimates 141 instead of 92 for Germany. This is the blend of gasoline and ethanol in Brazil, 87. What is relevant? Well, the EU regulation requires between 2020 and 22 maximum 95. Well, in Brazil, gasoline plus ethanol already meets, on average, the EU most stringent regulation. Okay? What is this green one? It's the internal combustion engine flex car in Brazil, 58. 80% of Brazil's fleet of vehicles today is flex. This is this car. And this is my car, the hybrid Toyota using ethanol, 29 grams. Next slide. This is how we are projecting what should happen by 2032. By 2032, the current internal combustion engines, flex cars using ethanol, are going to be emitting 38. The hybrid, 27. And, hello? And the fuel cell, 27. What I'm trying to say here, and the blend of gasoline and ethanol, 64. And the electric car in Europe, 74 at the best. What does it say, essentially? Essentially, this proves what I said in the opening in the morning. The blend of ethanol and gasoline makes gasoline sustainable and provides longevity to gasoline. I don't need a battery electric vehicle, which is very expensive, to achieve these limits. This gives longevity to oil. Why is this important for us in Brazil, in our planning purposes? Well, because Brazil is moving from 2.6 million barrels a day to 7.5 million barrels a day in 5 years. We are already, at this moment, at 3.1 million barrels. What are we going to do with all this oil? In fact, if you want to invest in oil or refineries in Brazil, it's open game. Because another thing that we approved at the council was the deregulation of refining and the end of the monopoly from Petrobras. Next. Besides the other environmental benefits, ethanol does not produce particulate matter, MP 2.5. São Paulo, as I mentioned, is the city ranked 879 with only 16 air quality index, 16.2, versus the average here in the large cities in India of 135, sometimes 220. We don't use tetraethyl lead because of the high octane content. We don't have a carcinogenic aromatics. We reduce carbon monoxide. We don't have formaldehydes, we have acetaldehydes. Acetaldehyde is a cousin of vinegar. I prefer vinegar than formol, which is formaldehyde. A lot of reduction of volatile organic compounds, which are precursory of smog, photochemical smog. Next. So, in our view, which are the next steps? First, optimization of the internal combustion engine. In Europe, Daimler, less than 2% sales of electric battery cars, and reliance on batteries, which are imported from China mostly, destroying the automobile industry in Germany. Second, hybrids. Why hybrids? Because the battery in the hybrid is only 1.3 kilowatts. And the battery in the electric car is 40 to 100 kilowatts. And 1 kilowatt, at least in Brazil, costs around $1,000 per kilowatt. That's why the battery car is so expensive. It's not accessible. You need to build up the infrastructure. You spend a lot of carbon to build up the infrastructure. And the other final phase is electrification using sustainable biofuels, fuel cells, extended range vehicles. Well, even the hybrid is already electrification. Next. So, I was amazed with the declaration of Nissan in June 2016 when they said, with the current ethanol distribution infrastructure, the 42,000 stations, Brazil has already solved the hydrogen distribution hurdle. We are distributing hydrogen already. And I said, well, they're right. And actually, this is equivalent to a network of hydrogen already in place. Next. And what is the stoichiometric equation of burning this ethanol? Is ethanol plus oxygen equals CO2, which is recaptured by sugarcane, plus water. So we are producing water. We resolve the pollution problem because biomass recaptures CO2. It's neutral. Next. We brought this prototype from Nissan to Brazil in October 2016. And I drove this car. And I asked the engineer from Nissan, Mr. Mori, why did you do it in a van, not a nice sedan? And then he said, because we wanted to make a statement. I said, which statement? And then he said, we wanted to prove this technology can be used in large cars, heavy ones as well. Have you noticed that all the electric cars are small and tiny? It's because of the weight of the batteries. I said, next. KPMG conducted a survey in 2017. Global executives of the automobile industry, 62% of them agree totally or partially that electric battery vehicles will fail because of infrastructure challenges. 78% believe that fuel cell vehicles represent the real advance in electrification for mobility. Next. Please, next. So what is electrification with ethanol? It takes the advantage of high density of ethanol, because what is the problem of the battery? It's the low density, energy density. The battery today has 130 watt-hours per kilogram, going to maximum 330. That's the industry target. Eventually, they will reach 700 watt-hour per kilogram. What is the energy density of ethanol? 6,200 watt-hour per kilogram. It's very hard, it's very difficult to substitute a tank of ethanol or gasoline with batteries because of the low density of batteries. And this will remain so. It's the option that has the lowest greenhouse gas emissions, uses the existing infrastructure, avoids concerns over availability of lithium and cobalt, avoids the issue of the lifespan of the batteries and the discard of the batteries and the pollution that it generates. And it creates jobs. Here in India, there's a policy to support sugarcane farmers, 53 million. And then you have a surplus sugarcane. And then you don't know what to do with the surplus sugarcane, produce surplus sugar, then subsidize sugar exports. Why not use this sugar to produce ethanol? Next. So our view is that it's possible to enlarge the use of high-density, low-carbon liquid fuels, stimulating higher energy efficiency and lower environmental footprint, complementing renewable and traditional fuels, using the existing infrastructure, making it immediate implementation, promoting local technologies in fuel and automobile technology, Next. That's why we created RenovaBio. In 1 year, we designed, created the legislation proposal, and approved in Congress in 1 year. And it's being implemented now, 2020. And it's our way of achieving the Paris Climate Agreement goals. How? Next. Placing innovation and efficiency in biofuel production at the center of Brazil's strategy for the use of low-carbon sources of energy, without a subsidy, without a carbon tax. Next. Based on 2 pillars: induction of energy efficiency and recognition of the capacity of each biofuel to promote carbon reduction. Next. What is the target? To create a market-driven mechanism to promote expansion of biofuel bioenergy based on sustainable practices. Next. What is the mechanism? Voluntary certification based on life cycle assessment using ISO standards. The only thing the government does is define the target, the decarbonization target. Next. A mechanism for market-driven pricing of carbon, unleashing market forces to implement and drive innovation, to stimulate continued demand growth independent of government mandates. We don't want mandates anymore. Let's the market define. Without electing or predefining a champion. Let the market define who's going to be the champion. Next. Eligibility criteria, 0 deforestation. If you deforest, you're out. All area under cultivation must be registered by satellite under Brazil's forestry code. Next. Based on the belief that market forces should drive the choice for the most efficient option towards increased energy environmental efficiency. Next. What is our belief? My belief. Biofuel, in general, not only ethanol, but mostly biomethane as well, is solar energy captured, stored, and distributed in an efficient, economic, and safe manner. Next. It's actually hydrogen captured, stored, and distributed in a bucket. I say ethanol is hydrogen in a bucket. I don't need to use titanium tanks at 700 bar. Next. At this moment, we have 222 biofuel producers already under certification. And I have no doubt that we are going to meet easily the decarbonization target for this year, which is 28.7 million tons of carbon. I was 2 weeks ago in Berlin for the Green Week, and the Germans were very proud, saying that they were going to reduce 9 million. Well, in 10 years, Brazil is going to reduce 700 million, which is equivalent to 1 year's German emission total. Next. This is how we are going to evolve. We're going to evolve from 26.7 billion liters of gasoline equivalent to 47.1 in ethanol, biodiesel from 5.7 to 11.1, biomethane from 0 to 0.25, and biojet fuel to 0.36. Actually, Dr. Neil Garg was very kind to invite me to speak about aviation, which I also handle, aviation fuels, and I'll be glad to address CORSIA and aviation impacts later on this afternoon. Next. 20 countries, 19 plus Brazil, representing over 50% of world population, issued a declaration of vision in Bonn at COP23, saying that to achieve the 2-degree scenario, the target for 2030, which is like planning where we are going to spend our next weekend, is to raise the proportion of bioenergy in world energy demand twice, to double. And the proportion of biofuels in transport fuels, including sea and air, to triple. And scaling up is possible with smart agricultural practices and proper policies, like Renova Bio. Next. And what is the projection? Well, the current production of 130 billion liters must go to 500. That's why there's this sense of urgency. 500 in 2030 and 1.12 trillion liters by 2050. Next. That's why I think we have in our hands, with this complementarity between biofuels and traditional fuels, the solution to resolve global warming and the refugee crisis. Because if people in Africa understand this, they will not jump into the Mediterranean anymore. They will be producing biofuels sustainably in Africa for themselves and eventually to sell to Europe. Next. That's why we believe that we are moving towards the age of hydrogen. Hydrogen, represented by high density, low carbon footprint, sustainably produced, certified, advanced biofuels, such as ethanol, biogas, and biomethane, complementing traditional fuels. Next. And that's why we think that policies like Renova Bio are a model for expansion of clean, efficient energy solutions for mobility. And we're ready to share how we did this. We're going to promote an event next week, February 24, at the Taj Mahal New Delhi Hotel. And I invite you to participate. I'm going to Brazil tomorrow, but I'll be back Saturday with a group of experts, and we are going to tell you how to create policies to make this happen, how to create policies to enable to have what we have done, to have 46%. In São Paulo, 65% of gasoline substitution. And I will be most glad to host you on February 24th at the Taj Mahal. Thank you very much.